quietly, you're never ours to own. Saving sounds you make to try to keep you home.
Welcome to the Chirosation, where chiropractors share their stories and lessons learnt in practice. The intention of the Chirosation is to provide resources and a community that will help chiropractors realise their innate potential. So join the Chirosation today. Today we have a special guest to the Chirosation, Dr Peter Tuchin. In this conversation, Peter shares his chiropractic background and what led him to be a leader in chiropractic research. Peter has been in practice and academics for 30 years, which has given him great insight into the chiropractic profession. He is now working on assisting chiropractic to have a more prominent position in healthcare, and we can support him in this mission by getting involved in chiropractic research ourselves. So without further ado, enjoy this Chirosation. Welcome, Peter, to the Chirosation. Thank you so much for coming on. It's a pleasure to have you and hear your voice.
Thanks, Ben. Yeah, my pleasure.
Very good. So first things first, I'd like to just kind of open the conversation, get to know you a little bit better and have our listeners understand your backstory. Is what got you into chiropractic in the first place?
My journey into chiropractic's a fairly long one. After I left school, I actually started studying chemical engineering and worked in a steelworks, but didn't really see a future staying in the steelworks for 40 years. So decided to look at biomedical engineering, which got me into anatomy. And in anatomy lectures in Australia, the lecture room was either half chiropractic students or half physiotherapy students. So I ended up meeting a physiotherapy student who shared a house with a chiropractic student and two med students, and got to know the chiropractor really well. And after I decided biomedical engineering wasn't really what I wanted to do, he suggested talking to the chiropractic school, and the rest is history.
Fantastic. So where did you end up studying chiropractic?
I did it at the Sydney College of Chiropractic, which ultimately amalgamated into Macquarie University.
Perfect. Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well. Very good. And then obviously you studied, you graduated. Did you stay practicing in Australia or did you travel after then?
Once I graduated, I had a 6-month break before I got into full-time practice. So I went on a 6-month honeymoon, traveling, backpacking around Europe.
Good on you.
And then came back and settled into full-time practice.
Fantastic. And where did you originally set up?
I did a couple of short-term associate practices around Sydney. And then I think it was about 12 months after that, I bought a practice on the Central Coast in New South Wales, which is about an hour north of Sydney.
Nice. And just because a lot of our listeners are new grads, what was that first kind of couple of years like for you? And would you recommend to people to go into those associate positions so they can kind of get a grasp of what the chiropractic profession is like?
Look, I think everyone's so different. We have a lot of mature age students go through Macquarie, so people that have obviously come from another background and different careers. Once they've graduated, then I think there's no problems at all for them going straight into their own practice. Right. For young graduates that have gone straight from school basically into chiropractic, being an associate for a while is a good thing because obviously there's a lot to not only becoming a practitioner but then also running a business. So having the experience of someone running a business for you initially so you can focus on being a good practitioner, I think is very effective.
Brilliant. And then how many years in practice did it take before you decided to dip your feet back into academia and start your master's and then eventually PhD?
I was only in full-time practice for, I think, about 12 months when I started working at Macquarie. Prior to that, though, I had actually started teaching for Sydney College of Chiropractic. So almost straight after I graduated, I started teaching for Sydney College of Chiropractic. It was a bit complex back in those days. We used to take graduates from universities all around Australia. And so I moved to Brisbane straight after I graduated, and we had what we call a feeder program. So people from University of Queensland could study chiropractic, and we had these external units. So I actually started teaching some of the external units at the University of Queensland.
Oh, okay. Very good. And
what interesting time.
Yeah, it would have been a very interesting time. And at the time, what kind of fields were you teaching? Was it just kind of basic chiropractic, or was it the more research realm?
No, back then I taught basic chiropractic skills, so very early skills, which is just some soft tissue therapies and palpation skills and things like that. And I also used to teach philosophy.
Oh, very good.
Which is an interesting background.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's not the background I would have thought. Obviously now with you being more in the research realm.
Yeah, well, just to surprise everybody, I taught philosophy for at least 10 years.
Good on you. Well, that gives you a good background. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then obviously, so you've had that relationship with Macquarie from the beginning, which is wonderful. Yeah. And then what kind of transitioned you into deciding, I want to really delve deep into headaches and migraines and look at how chiropractic can help with those?
So when Macquarie amalgamated with Sydney College, we started getting involved with a lot of the academics and also looking at some of the major conferences. So I actually attended I attended the very first World Federation of Chiropractic meeting.
Wow.
And we also had another large meeting in London. And at the time, one of my colleagues, Rod Bonello, who was the director of the centre back then, and I at a conference said, we can do research. We've got the skills to be able to do it. And that's the direction that we think chiropractic is going to go and should go. Brilliant. So I got into research very early on. The other thing as an academic as well, it's the old saying, publish or perish. If you want to get any kind of advancement or promotion as an academic, it's always looked at on your research aspects and research skills.
Of course. And was that a trajectory that you felt like you were wanting to head down, or was that just, again, another thing that you just got caught up in and felt that you had a skill in?
No, look, I firmly believe that good quality research is the best way forward for the chiropractic profession. I've been in practice for 30 years. I'm still in practice. I saw patients yesterday. So I'm in practice half my week and as an academic the other half.
Fantastic.
And I can put my hand on my heart and say categorically, if we want chiropractic to really get the recognition and influence and size of practice that I think we should have, then the way to achieve that is through great research.
Brilliant. And then what kind of centres around the world are you looking at who are actually producing good quality research?
Look, I attend lots of seminars and conferences. So, I've been to almost all chiropractic schools. I know there's a lot of them, but I've been to a lot of them.
That's awesome.
So I've got some, good contacts and colleagues, friends in all the chiropractic schools.
Nice.
And there's, chiropractic schools are doing some fantastic work, particularly Canada. Canada's a great model, which everyone should be following. They've now got, I think, 10 or 12 professorial chairs in universities around Canada, which is a big achievement.
Fantastic.
And so the quality and the quantity of research coming out of Canada is fantastic. Macquarie had a really good research background for quite a while, and unfortunately recent events have sort of changed that a bit. But for quite a while, Macquarie had quite high research output. So that's a bit frustrating that we've lost that momentum a little bit.
Mm. And where do you see the kind of next research centre being in Australia? Because obviously there's plenty of people like you doing this kind of research, and where would they call home now?
So the four major institutions in Australia, that's Macquarie, Murdoch in Perth, RMIT in Melbourne, and there's a Central Queensland University, which is based mostly in Queensland, but they've got a few campuses around Australia. Mm-hmm. They're the main site for all the researchers. There are a few researchers in private practice, but I think to really get the support and get the productivity, you have to be associated or working at a university.
Sure, of course. And I mean, obviously you've got a background in headaches and migraines yourself, which I'd love to talk about a little bit more later in terms of your process and what's come out. But what do you see as being the kind of future areas of chiropractic and where the research should be focusing?
Look, being a clinician, I always really focus on clinical research. So in my opinion, clinical research is the best way to go. Having said that, there's all areas of research that we could improve. From your listeners' point of view, I mean, I really try and encourage practitioners to start off writing case reports. Chiropractors in practice will always come up saying, oh, look, I had this really interesting case. The person had this and this and this, and they responded well, or they didn't respond well for these reasons. And, that sort of information is fantastic. But unless it's published, the rest of the community, medical practitioners, government departments, everybody, just calls that anecdotal evidence. Yeah. And so it doesn't really mean much. And I know chiropractic practitioners get very offended saying, but I know this person got great results. I'm not questioning that in the slightest. But unless it's published, it's not really that significant, that important. If it's published, it's totally different. So, I really encourage practitioners, including new graduates, because, they've got the skills of, how to do research and have that background. So if people can look at, you had a really interesting case and just start to write that up and publish it, it'll make a huge difference for the profession.
Fantastic, because I'm currently looking at doing that as well. Just had a really interesting sciatic case came through and fantastic results, and thought, well, this is definitely worth it to write it up as a case report. I mean, even though there's plenty of evidence to show chiropractic can help with sciatica, another bit isn't going to hurt.
That's right. And look, it's just a great way of getting started on the, research skill acquisition. And so you think, well, how do I actually get started, and what sort of things do I have to do, and what's the whole process? Definitely. Now, any practitioner, if they contact an academic, someone that might have taught them, or they've got friends they know, academics will always help people get started with research. I'm very happy to help people write up case reports and try and get them published.
Definitely, and I have to add to that, you were very, very receptive to me just contacting you out of the blue as well. So it definitely seems like that there is that culture of helping each other. And it's just starting, just reaching out and saying, look, I'm working on this. What do you think? Can you give me a brief review? Yeah. Can you tell me where I should be looking to publish this kind of information?
Yeah, and I'll give you a great example of that. I had a student from Norway graduate from chiropractic at Macquarie 5, 6, 7 years ago, I suppose. And I saw him at a conference, and he said he was quite keen to get started on research, and he wanted to do some research, but he wasn't really too sure or too confident on what to do. And so I said exactly the same thing to him. First step, just try, got some interesting cases, I'm sure, try and write up some case studies. He was particularly interested in Gonstead technique. Cool. So he's a Gonstead practitioner. And so he started off, did a couple of case reports, got them published. Then, as you're doing some reading and a literature review for each one of those, you start to develop a few more skills and knowledge of what research has been done and what hasn't been done and how to do it. And so, cut a long story short, he's just about to receive his PhD. And he did 2 randomised controlled trials based in Norway. So, people are listening in New Zealand thinking, well, how could I possibly do research through Macquarie? It's really easy. Yeah. So he did 2 randomised controlled trials on Gonstead treatment for migraine and on cervicogenic headache. One of them got published in the European Journal of Neurology, which has a very good impact factor. Unfortunately, the results weren't as positive as we would have liked, but again, it's research.
But that's the nature of research, isn't it?
And look, the results did show that chiropractic treatment is effective. On the surface, it seemed to be the same as placebo. So, of course, there's lots of people that don't like chiropractic have jumped on the bandwagon saying, see, chiropractic doesn't work.
Sure.
What they failed to realise was chiropractic and placebo performed dramatically better than usual care, which was pharmaceutical treatment.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And as I said, I've been going backwards and forwards with blogs amongst some of the chiropractic haters, and
Sure.
One study, either positive or negative, is never enough to hang a profession by. So it's just another study, and when you put it in context with all the other studies, it shows that maybe Gonstead technique in that particular situation and scenario wasn't as effective as we first thought.
Sure. And that's actually good information for the profession. And if there was more research out there, then maybe we'd have a better understanding of, well, when is that style of care the most
Absolutely.
applicable?
And look, from early practitioners' point of view, I can tell you categorically, patients love the fact that you are doing research. And, if you get that research published, and here's a copy of my latest research paper that you have in your waiting room, people are really going to think much more of you as a practitioner. And I've also got to say, doing research has helped me travel around the world many times. I've got good friends and colleagues in all parts of the world based on doing presentations at conferences.
Fantastic. And just along that same thought of, speaking about clinical experience and the different cases that you can write up, what have been some interesting cases that have walked into your office recently?
Well, one of course for me, migraines. I had a patient that had migraines for 60 years. She used to have them once a week, what was referred to as a classic syndrome, so migraine with aura. And she'd get the full spectrum, photophobia, phonophobia, severe nausea, not so much vomiting, interesting, but she basically had to lock herself away in a dark room for, 12 hours or sometimes more once a week. She got referred to me in clinic by her sister-in-law. It took her quite a while to convince her to come in. Her initial comment to me in practice was, I think this is a waste of time. I don't have any neck problems, so what's a chiropractor going to do? And we went through quite a long chat and did the history examination. I said, well, I actually think you do have a lot of problems, so let's trial a short course of treatment and see if we can make any changes. So it took a bit of convincing, but she agreed to start some treatment. When I did the first treatment, she came back a few days later and said, how did you go? And she said, well, it was interesting. When I came into you, I had a sensation that I was going to get a migraine, so what's referred to as prodrome. So I had my prodrome, and typically if I didn't take my medication, I would have ended up with a migraine. But once you adjusted my neck, it seemed to stop. I said, well, that's very interesting. I said, and today I've got the same sensation. So I feel like the prodrome's there, and if I don't take medication, I'm worried I'll get a migraine. I said, well, see what happens. Well, let's see what adjustments you need and see what goes on. So came back a little while later. How did you go? Well, same sensation. It was there, but once you adjusted my neck and adjusted my back, it stopped. And again, to cut a long story short, she never had another migraine in her life after her first session.
Wow.
So once a week for 60 years to zero.
Yeah.
Now, lovely story, but the good thing is I published it. Perfect. Now, that becomes evidence. And, it was published in a chiropractic journal. I tried to get that published in many medical journals, which they refused, mostly because they said it's just a case study. But, it's a very significant case study. But eventually it got published. So I think that's a very positive thing.
Absolutely. And then, that's kind of a perfect segue into what I wanted to talk about next, because the migraine's obviously a very specific passion of yours, and you got your PhD in it in 2005. What was that journey like?
Oh, look, it's a long journey, and I think that daunts a lot of people who think, wow, that's, my thesis was 100,000 words. So, you think, how would you possibly write 100,000 words? And of course, the philosophical answer is, step by step.
Yeah.
It's like starting off day one in chiropractic school and looking at your tutors and teachers thinking, my God, these people know so much. I'm never going to know this much. And, of course, at the end of 5 years, you think, well, actually, I do know quite a lot, So it's the same journey. It's always good to have a good mentor and somebody helping along the way. In the early days at Macquarie, we didn't have that quite as much, so it was a bit more of a hard slog for myself. Henry Pollard, who was doing a PhD at the same time as I, so we're good friends, good good mates. So that was good. But yeah, if anybody's considering doing some research, just getting a good supervisor, mentor can make a big difference.
Absolutely. And then obviously again on the research bandwagon and looking at making more chiropractic more valid and a lot more respected in the public eye, what do you think the future of chiropractic is in general and then also in Australia specifically? And how can we make it better?
One of the things I'm working on at the moment is trying to get chiropractic into hospitals in Australia. When I went to the World Federation of Chiropractic conference last year in Montreal, one of the things, again, Canada and Canada and States, there's quite a few hospitals now which have chiropractic departments and have patients that can receive chiropractic treatment through the hospital system. And that's one thing Australia doesn't have, and I think it's a big step forward for us. And following on, we had Scott Haldeman present at our conference last year, COCO, the Chiropractic and Osteopathic College of Australia conference. And of course, it's one of the things that Scott Haldeman's been pushing for quite a while now: primary spine care centres, primary spine care clinics. And so it's multidisciplinary and making sure that people just get good quality spine care. But once you can break down some of those barriers, there's lots of departments, chiropractic departments, that have been very, very successful in hospitals in Canada and America for over a decade.
Brilliant. That sounds very, very exciting. And then in terms of your own philosophy, where do you feel chiropractic fits into that kind of hospital model?
Look, the philosophy side of things we've got to be quite cautious with. It's easy for that to be distorted or unclear, confused, and for medical practitioners it does create quite a few issues. So we have to be cautious in what language we use and how we approach things. So the initial focus for me would be more just establishing that those contacts and that dialogue based on spine care and in particular back pain, neck pain, headaches, migraines.
Okay, fantastic. And then in terms of Australia and in the future of Australia, obviously Macquarie is going through a few difficulties at the moment. Where do you think things are heading?
It's an interesting question. Macquarie's not bad at the moment. So for a few years we had a situation where the university was looking at trying to transfer us to another university.
Yeah.
Mostly, unfortunately, because they wanted money. And the chiropractic program at Macquarie is very successful. We've had great enrolment numbers for a long time, and we're very profitable. So Macquarie thought, well, we can sell this program, get money. They've introduced medicine. We've also got physiotherapy. And so some of the people at Macquarie thought, chiropractic medicine and physiotherapy couldn't possibly be together in a university. But that's changed. For the foreseeable future, we're at Macquarie. So we've got to strengthen those relationships. It's a possibility that Macquarie University actually has a hospital on campus. So that's one of the things we could look at, trying to work together at the hospital.
Absolutely.
So, look, the future is a tricky one, I suppose. I think we really need to try and keep building bridges with all the disciplines, medicine, physio, trying to work together. I think if we're confrontational, that's going to make it harder for us to really achieve what I think we could achieve. We're still quite a small profession. There's 5,000 in Australia, but that compared to medical practitioners and physiotherapists is very small. So, if we want to take on that battle, I think we could spend a lot of energy and not necessarily achieve what we'd like to achieve.
Absolutely. And if any of the listeners are really inspired by you and want to get in touch, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Just my email through Macquarie is fine. That's peter.tuchin@mq.edu.au.
Perfect.
And if people didn't get all that, you just go onto Macquarie University's web page and just search. And if you type in my name, Tuchin, Tuchin, it'll come up with my email address. So look, I'm always happy to look at emails, and in particular, practitioners have got a case they think might be interesting to publish. Send me some details and we can have a chat about it and see if it's likely a journal would be interested.
Perfect. I'll add that email address in the show notes as well to make it easy for people.
Yeah, fantastic.
Peter, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on. Really interesting to hear about your perspective and where things are going and what we can do as a profession to really kind of work together and have a better future.
Sure. And look, if you want another chat another time, there's always lots of research coming out and I'm always happy to talk about. So, feel free to get in contact with me and we can do another session later on.
Perfect. That sounds really, really good. Thank you for all the support you've been showing this platform. If you have any ideas for future episodes or you'd like to be involved, send me a message through the website or your preferred social media. For the resources mentioned in this episode, check out the show notes or thechirosation.com. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend and leave a comment on Facebook. Now go out there and start a Chirosation today.
Someday there'll be room in our heads, but for now there's you. Familiar voices holding memories.